The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm David Shearman, and welcome to Politically Speaking. My guest today on Politically Speaking is Alex Ruff, the MP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. Alex, always a pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thanks, David. It's great to have this opportunity. It's always great chatting. You always put me, you test me a little bit, but which is great practice being an elected official. But at the same time, it's just a great way to communicate and get out there. So thanks for having me.
Very much, Alex. And I should put a brief plug here that if people are not able to watch this on Rogers Cable 53, they can watch it on the Rogers TV Grey County webpage. There's a special page for Politically Speaking, and all of the previous shows have been archived, and people can watch it. Even the very first show, Alex, that you were on when you were newly elected.
You had me on even before that, David. You had me on initially with as when I was a candidate before I was elected, because you had all the political candidates on leading into that very first election. So yeah, I know you're 100% right. It's easy to go back. I know they're available there through YouTube as well, through the Rogers Politically Speaking YouTube channel or whatever it's called.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So Alex, let's start at the beginning, because there's always kinds of interesting stuff to talk about that's going on in Ottawa. And you've made, how shall I say, you were front and center in a recent committee meeting on the Special Committee on Afghanistan, and you made a special motion requesting the government release the reviews by departments on the evacuation of Kabul in 2021. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely, David. So look, if you actually look at the mandate in the motion that created the Special Committee on Afghanistan last, I guess it was November when we stood up the committee, the committee's really got two functions. First off, it's to go look back at what went right, what went wrong, and what did we learn from the fall of Kabul and the fall of Afghanistan, and where we sort of didn't, we failed to get the necessary Afghans out that had helped us, and there's so many Afghans still at risk there. The second part is looking right now in the present and looking forward on what needs to be done, what needs to be changed to get those that are still stuck there, that are still being terrorized by the Taliban or persecuted by them, in particular visible minorities and women and girls, young girls, like that the Taliban are bringing back their Sharia law and not allowing them to have the same privileges. And they're targeting them, they're targeting the LGBTQ community, they're targeting any minority religious groups. And so what more can we do going forward? So that's the two parts. But specifically, what I was looking for during the different government officials and testimony from witnesses that we had throughout the Special Committee on Afghanistan over the last number of months, we had the Global Affairs Canada officials there. They admitted that they have done what military parlance an after-action review, or they've done a post-operation review of what sort of what happened there. We had the ambassador there, Reed Sears, talking about when they left the embassy, how that all happened, and et cetera. And so they've done that review. We had the Canadian Armed Forces, the Minister of National Defence there. They've admitted, I knew that they would have done an after-action review. They've done that review already. And as well, during the testimony, it was confirmed that PCO, the Privy Council's office, ran an interdepartmental whole of government review on what happened then. Well, considering our mandate as a committee is to report back to Parliament on what went right, what went wrong, and what do we need to do going forward to make sure this type of situation never occurs again, it would only be valuable for the committee to have those reviews and have those reports provided to us so that we could include them in the report that we have due next to Parliament, no later. It's due back to the Chamber, to the House, no later than the 8th of June, next week. So we've already taken our first crack at the initial draft of the report, the review. That was Monday night for 3+ hours. And we'll do it again next Monday night for 3+ hours or until it's done, because we are on a hard timeline to get it done. So I just figured it'd be beneficial to have that. Unfortunately, the Liberal members of the committee filibustered, refused to sort of get it to a vote, tried to claim national security concerns over those reviews or reports. Again, we weren't asking for complete unfiltered, unredacted documents. If there's national security stuff, and there would be within, I know, the Canadian Armed Forces review that's talking about specific potential operational stuff. But again, that isn't what I was looking for, and we get that redacted, and the departments are mandated to redact that stuff before it would be released to a public committee, unless we specifically ask for the unredacted reports. But even if we did, they'd still redact them, and there'd be a large debate over that. So the whole point is, it was just a filibuster, and I think you can just draw attention to the recently released UK review that was done by their Foreign Service Committee, or Foreign Affairs Committee equivalent. And you got to remember, unlike in Canada, they have a majority government over there, and their report is damning. And most of the same considerations and observations that committee found upon doing their review of the fall of Afghanistan and the fall of Kabul are a lot of the same comments that we saw come out of the testimony we received, where there was a lack of interdepartmental coordination. There wasn't that leadership shown. The fact is they were very hard on their ministers because they didn't come back off vacation. Well, what did we have in Canada? We actually had a government that, as this was following, called an election, and had ministers more concerned about getting reelected than actually doing what's right to get these Afghans and take care of the situation in this international humanitarian aid crisis. So there's lots of stuff that was in there, and so it's a very damning report that they were able to provide that's already released, and I think that's part of the concern. So anyway, ultimately, it didn't happen. We're now sort of up against this tightrope that, realistically, I'm not going to get those reports, but I would note this is the third venue that I've tried to get the reports. I provided a written question, an order paper question, a written question to the government to provide that. Unfortunately, that response likely won't show up till June 21st because they have 45 days to provide a reply from when I submitted it. And secondly, I stood up in the House of Commons and asked this question for it. And unfortunately, the Minister of Immigration, who I didn't ask about the Minister of Immigration, because during their testimony, they never admitted that they'd done a review. So I didn't ask for them, yet the Minister of Immigration stood up and said, well, we can't provide that ongoing operations. And I wasn't asking about anything ongoing. I was asking about the historical stuff. So very frustrating that I haven't been able to get those, but ultimately I'm confident in, that I will continue to make that recommendation. Hopefully that recommendation will make, the report that we finalize and get to the House, and we'll see how that all plays out in the coming week and a half, and hopefully the government will comply and provide that information back to Canadians, back to Parliament, because I think it's in everybody's best interest. We do not want to see a situation down the road where Canada is committed to whether it's a military mission, a humanitarian mission around the globe, and we depend upon cultural advisors, interpreters, translators, and we have no ability to get them, and they don't want to come work for Canada because our reputation has been so sullied, and there's no sort of confidence that we will take care of them, that if they risk their lives to help us, that they're not going to be looked after down the road. So I just think it's important that we do this for the right reasons, to make sure that we learn from them, and they're not just lessons identified, they actually become lessons learned.
You raised a question about the UK report. Are you aware that the American government is doing something similar, or has done something similar already?
No, I'm not. I mean, David, it's a great question. I should get in looking into that. The challenge we have is just there's only so many hours in the day, and we continue to do that. And being a special committee, it sort of picks, and we have different members and on the committee, and everybody's got 2 or 3 files that they're responsible for. But that's no excuse. It's something that I should dig into. It's a good recommendation. I'll see what I can find in the next few days before we finalize our report. But our report has to be linked to testimony we receive. So that's the challenge too on how we draft ours. But again, it's definitely be interesting to see if the Americans have done something similar.
Yes, it's quite a situation, and in many ways extremely challenging and just outright sad that Afghanistan has been left in the lurch and created a massive humanitarian crisis that NGOs and the United Nations has to go in and try and clean up to the best of their ability. But there are deep diplomatic issues. I'm well aware of that too.
Absolutely.
Now, let's. You alluded to the fact that you're doing a lot of work, and probably that's probably a pretty good segue into a comment I heard recently describing the current session in Parliament as the silly season. And you tell us what it's like right now. You know that you sound like you're really busy.
Well, yeah, I am really busy, and so part of it is due to that special committee on Afghanistan. And as you're aware, I'm on the Human Resources and People with Disabilities committee, or was. I've actually just come off of that, but that's been meeting. And so one of the challenges that we had last week during a constituency week when I was back in the riding, I ended up spending, I think, the better part of 8 to 10 hours in committee meetings virtually. Because with the Omnibus Bill C-19 that was passed, tied to the Budget Implementation Act, that the government said they'd never do when they ran in 2015, that they'd do these type of bills. They put a pile of things in there that really aren't budgetary. And then the Finance Committee, who's been nonstop, I think they've been meeting almost every day over the last 2 weeks and eating up House of Commons resources, as it should be. There's arguably the most important piece of legislation that gets debated every year is the budget. They've been meeting every day to go through this 500-plus page omnibus bill. But there's a bunch of the divisions or sections of the bill that really don't have anything to do with finance. So I actually think they made the responsible decision 3 weeks ago on a Friday at 3:36 in the afternoon. We got it to the UMA committee. Please study Divisions 26, 27, 29, and 32 of this bill. Get back to us by 4:30 last Friday, if you have any concerns. And so, again, meanwhile, we already have our 2 committee meetings planned for the previous week. And then we were going to constituency week. So I think we shocked the government when we said, well, actually, as a committee, and in fact, we even got unanimous support. I think there was a bit of a kerfuffle with the Liberals that they voted they voted for it when they meant to vote against it, but it was great. It passed unanimously that we were going to have 3 meetings to study that. We brought witnesses in. We ended up only having 2 during last week. And ultimately, we've gone back to Finance Committee with a recommendation to remove the one division out of this bill, which all has to do with employment insurance and a tribunal that they want to establish, which really has nothing to do with the budget. So ultimately, we'll see if Finance Committee accepts that recommendation, and when it comes back for the report stage back to the House, whether they've made that changes or not. But I think they have to, or they don't have to. But I mean, if we got it through our committee, I'm not sure why the other opposition parties and it made our letter that it likely will happen. But we'll see. That's just our job. So we're doing our work. So that's all tied to that. But with respect to silly season, normally starting this year on June the 10th, if you look at the calendar that anybody can look on the House of Commons website, you'll see asterisks. And that's what it's to make a determination if there's going to be extended sittings to midnight. And we can always do emergency debates or take note debates. I think we talked about that on the last episode or show that we did with you, David. However, Motion 11, which was passed about 3 weeks ago in the House, I opposed it, as did my colleagues. I believe the Bloc opposed it too. It was basically, normally those extended debates, take note debates, emergency debates require unanimous consent. All the parties sort of have to agree to it, the party whips, the party House leaders. And the same thing with extended sittings at the end of the sitting, and it's tied around getting key legislation passed before the summer recess. Motion 11 allowed them to do with only one party supporting them, i.e. the NDP, and to get this so that they can call it any. But the tragic part about it actually allows them to recess Parliament with only one other party's support, where normally, even in a majority government, it requires all four major parties to agree before we break for summer and head back to the constituency. Motion 11 allows them to do it on their own with one House leader, one other party's support, and boom, they could just end things. So the point is that started a few weeks ago, and we've had a number of midnight sittings where they prevented us from doing what we call dilatory motions or anything like votes per se. We can't filibuster it, and they actually aren't even showing up. It's Conservatives, opposition parties debating government legislation amongst ourselves, because really there's minimal government or Liberal MPs even in the House. So it puts a bit of it allows us to make our point, but they're not even around to actually debate back with us. So they've done that. We did find a little tool that we were allowed to use about, allowing a member to be heard, and that threw a bit of a wrench in their plans. So since we've shown that if they want to do this without proper collaboration and cooperation amongst all the parties, we can bring back, we still have a tool in our toolbox that'll make it. So ever since we did that, guess what? There's been collaboration and cooperation about agreeing what needs to be brought forward on what night. So they haven't done it since. We'll see if they start doing it again here in the coming weeks.
I did hear a commentary that suggested that the government has a fair amount, most of the agenda so far has been financial, and you referred to the budget debate. But as in terms of substantive legislation that to meet the government's commitments that it has made ever since the last election, there's been precious little.
I'm not going to disagree with that comment at all, David. There's lots of, they don't manage the debate very well, the legislative agenda. They've been bringing up stuff again, revitalizing C11, the Online News Act, which again, there's huge concerns on that from many Canadians and many experts. Nobody's pushing back. We agree with the aspect that, the big streaming services, et cetera, should be paying their fair share of taxes, and revenue should be coming to Canada. But again, this gets into a huge debate around, platforms versus user content driven stuff. And there's loopholes in there that we're trying to close up, or to make sure that it's crystal clear and there's no vagueness about CRTC and building, more government bureaucracy to try to regulate what's on the internet. And they have other bills, but again, that's not the big priority or the big promises that I remember hearing a lot from the Liberal government. So in the last campaign. So look, they control the agenda. They keep bringing other things forward. I think you wanted to chat about, and maybe it's a good segue into, they tabled Bill C-21, which was, it's not identical to Bill C-21 from the last Parliament, but it's around firearms. But again, they're trying to tout it in the last couple of days as a gun crime bill, and there's actually gun legislation. Well, it's gun legislation, but it has zero to do with gun crime. If you actually read through the bill, it's about targeting gun ownership in Canada, and it won't do anything to reduce gun crime in Canada. So again, I don't understand how that becomes a priority. I do believe it was an election platform promise, but they've tabled that. But again, it's not going to come up for we'll see. I don't think it'll even get to a vote before the summer recess. So again, they pick and choose what they want to do, and I think they sometimes choose to bring things forward based on what's going on in the United States and events down there, and with the tragic shootings that have occurred down there recently. But unfortunately, everything that they brought forward, isn't going to solve the U.S. Tragic and really, I'd say even, needs to be addressed gun challenges that they have down in the United States. But bringing in and targeting our law-abiding firearms owners in Canada isn't going to solve the U.S. problem, and it's actually not going to solve anything in Canada either. So it's frustrating when, we're bringing in legislation, we're debating stuff that actually isn't going to get to the root causes of some of these issues and problems that Canadians all Canadians, regardless of their political stripe, want to see addressed. In particular, the gang shootings that occur with mainly illegal handguns in our major urban centers. But as we noted just recently, last week we had a shooting in Owen Sound that was reported, and I haven't seen any additional details, but I'm confident in stating that I'm pretty sure it was done with a handgun, and I'm pretty confident in stating that if they capture the perpetrators, that it will be an illegal handgun and not one by our police vetted every 24 hours registered and restricted firearms owners in this country and in our riding.
Just to be clear, the firearms legislation will not likely come to fruition before the summer recess. Does that mean the bill stays on the order paper come for the fall, or will it have to be reintroduced?
No, it stays on unless the Prime Minister chooses to prorogue Parliament, which that would reset all government legislation. No, if it's a normal recess and we're back the third week of September, I think September 19th is when we're slated to be back, then it would just continue on. All legislation continues on where it is. So a normal summer recess, all legislation just carries on. It's just an extended break from the House sitting. So it wouldn't need to be retabled.
So what really will happen with not just the firearms legislation, but all legislation that doesn't make it through the House when the House rises, that it'll just come back in the fall, and the opposition and the other parties will have another kick at the cat, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're signaling by tabling it. Again, who knows? Maybe that will be their priority for the last 2 weeks, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks here in the House. But I'm confident in stating there's just not enough time for it to get through even the House of Commons and to get to committee, to get debated, get through all the stages, and then it's got to go to the Senate, which the Senate is already backlogged. So nothing's going to be passed. Now, there's different, specifically on that bill, there's different rumors about if they're going to try to do something regulatory that will further restrict, our law-abiding gun owners. And so we'll see if they're going to try to do something like that, regulatory or not, but I haven't seen anything in writing or factual yet on that case. Sure.
And just to reiterate, you mentioned that the Senate itself is backed up. I think that I thought I heard something like 14 or 15 pieces of key legislation between the House and the Senate combined, because the Senate can start its own legislation, which then has to be approved by the House of Commons. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to happen. And I presume the Senate also takes a summer break as well.
Oh, yes. The Senate takes, in fact, they normally take even more extended breaks. They do normally sit 1 week later than us, I believe, at the end of June to make sure that they can get through. Normally, their summer recess, the final thing they pass is something tied to the budget. So my prediction, it could be C-19. However, they're still debating at their finance committee at the Senate, Bill C-8, the economic fall update. So that still hasn't been passed through the Senate yet, which is creating all sorts of issues because for whatever reason, I'm getting complaints on this from our teachers and from our farmers, is because the government made this a couple tax credits tied to C-8, and that traditionally there has been, from my understanding, CRA has gone forward and issued those tax credits even without royal assent historically. But the fact is they're actually tying up tax returns to many Canadians. And I've been getting this complaint because in some cases the credit they'd actually get from what they've put into Bill C-8 for our farmers, a lot of our farmers, it's worth $150 for them. Some of them are expecting thousands or 8,000 or plus, tax returns that are not being paid out to them because CRA, for some reason, isn't just saying, look, this didn't receive a cent yet, therefore this credit's not available. Please resubmit an adjustment, or we've noted that you asked for this. If this does pass, we will just redo your tax return upon confirmation that it has changed down the road, but they're just not even processing their tax return. So I'm getting a lot of concerns and questions about where that is, but it's sitting at the Senate Committee for Finance. So then it's got to go, once it's done that, it goes to their report stage. And so it requires at least 2 more votes in the Senate once it gets out of committee. I asked that question of the Senate earlier today. So for the farmers out there listening and the teachers that are asking that or calling my office looking for an update, it could be out of Senate by next week, but there's still no clarification or confirmation on that. Ultimately, the Senate, it'll depend on what keeps going through. So yeah, so there's lots, my point is there's lots going on. And again, the government, it took a while to get it out of the House because, again, it wasn't the priority piece of legislation that we debated. They tabled it and they brought it forward a month, 2 months later, then they bring it forward 2 months after that, then they actually use time allocation on it. So ultimately, it got out of the House about a month ago over to the Senate, and now the Senate's going through their process, and we'll see when it comes out. So there's, as you say, there's lots of stuff that people are waiting on, and we'll see when this stuff gets passed.
Well, speaking of waiting on, and this is something that I've seen both in the media and I presume people are concerned about, and that is passports. And passports are one of the things that is a service that's offered by the MP's office that to forward those applications to Passport Canada. But I've seen media stories of huge lineups at the Passport Canada office down in Brampton and other places. What's the situation in terms of passports in relation to your office?
So again, look, we don't actually process them. I wish we could, because then they'd actually get done on time. What we do is we can take them and priority courier them down and get them, through a little bit, well, not necessarily through faster, but we can just make sure it gets there and that you're not throwing it in the normal mail to get them through. We can inquire on behalf of somebody that's got some urgent need for it to do. We can help facilitate that, but ultimately, the quickest way for them to get it done is to show up at in person to one of the passport offices, across the country. But you're right, this has been a huge issue. We brought it up countless times in the House of Commons. We've, in fact, UMA committee on a Monday. I've been moved off UMA now to go on to another committee. And what happened was we had the minister there, and she admitted on Monday that basically there is a problem and they don't really have a good solution for it. They're trying to they've hired more people, but they are so behind. It's become, that it's still, they're not meeting the standards that that Passport Canada has committed to. And it's unfortunate because this was something we should have seen coming as obviously with the pandemic and the other thing that's coming forward, the 10-year renewals for passports. So there's a huge demand, obviously pent-up demand after 2 years of lockdowns. And so a lot more people are traveling. And so this should have been forecasted well in advance as things were coming forward to make sure they had the staff on hand. So it's likely one of the biggest issues. We get emails on or phone calls every day into the office, and we continue to do our best to push the Passport Service Canada and the passport offices to help out constituents, to help out Canadians. But the backlog it's crazy. I think, I don't know, the stats I was hearing, I think last year Passport Canada processed 1.3 million passports. I think they did that already in March alone or something in 1 month. So obviously there was a downtick during the pandemic, but my point is there's huge demand for it, and there is a huge backlog.
Okay. Well, with that, Alex, we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and, we've got lots more to talk about. I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking, and we will be right back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
I'm a singer-songwriter from Six Nations, and I've been writing songs about my experience, and with that being said, it's helped me hold hope in my heart in following my dreams and being resilient to everyday Indigenous battles. Competition between spirit, earth, and wind, let me tell you now. This song in particular, The Shiner, is a special song that I wrote for my grandfather. He was a snow snake maker, and that is a Haudenosaunee winter sport. It's my job to educate and to share, and the music allows me to do that. He'll be shining snow snakes and mudcats to the end of his days.
Are you the type who would keep going or stop? It's not easy to stop when you have an addiction. Legalizing cannabis won't stop addiction. It trivializes its consumption. Let's be vigilant. If you need help, visit portage.ca.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest is Alex Ruff, who is the MP for Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound. Alex is in his Ottawa office and busier than a one-arm paper hanger, I'm quite sure, back and forth. As while we were on break, I noticed he took a dive into his smartphone and catching up on emails or reading documents or something. The life of an MP is pretty busy, isn't it?
Absolutely, Mark. When I was back in the riding last week for the constituency break, I did 2 presentations to 2 local schools, both grade 5-6 classes, civics classes. And one of the slides I throw up is sort of what's the daily life of an MP, sort of what our calendar looks like. And, the parliamentary calendar, the House of Commons sitting, very similar to the school year. But I showed up our traditional weekly calendar, but I actually took a screenshot of my week schedule from last week alone, just in the constituency. And as I already mentioned earlier in the show, I had a number of, normally I'm not meeting in committee. Well, I think I did 8 hours plus of it last week alone, between getting to events, doing the school briefs, meeting with constituents that came into the office or going to them. It was they were like, wow, do you sleep? Because there was a couple days, and even threw in the French leadership debate in French last week that I wanted to listen to. It was a packed week. So I think that some of them were like, oh, maybe being an elected official isn't all of it is made out to be some days. But look, anybody that gets involved in this is doing it regardless of what their stripe is, I believe, for the right reasons. And they shouldn't be afraid of work. Otherwise, you don't become an elected official. So we are busy.
For sure. Now, just out of curiosity, we like to, those of us who are perhaps more mature in years, like to think that our young people are engaged in our history and civics, for want of a better word. What's your take on the youth that you met with in the classes? Are they engaged in political life? Or are they aware of political life and how Canada is governed?
Absolutely. I mean, the grade 5 classes last week, maybe not as much as when I'm doing a grade 10 civics class at one of the high schools, because obviously they're at that level. They're more engaged on certain issues. But to be frank, the one school I was at, they asked some tough questions on a couple of key issues. They might have been prepped by their teacher a little bit on a couple of it. But the other classroom, the other class I went to, I was actually really impressed because they understood what one of the key messages I'm always talking to constituents about is just making sure you understand the difference of who's responsible for what. between the different levels of government and different levels of elected officials, between municipal, provincial, and federal. So I was really impressed. They had done the class well, and they were engaged. They understood that if you're having a problem with your neighbor's dog or a noise bylaw concern, that calling MP Alex Ruff, your federal representative, is not your first option or the best option to take care of the issue you have with your neighbor's dog. So I have had to deal with that in the office before too, where I've taken fielded calls or emails. But my point is different. Yeah, the kids are, they always ask tough questions. They seem genuinely interested, and it's a great opportunity because I think that is key. We're so privileged to live in Canada and live in the democracy that we live in. But it's always a challenge when you live in a country like Canada to keep people engaged, because it's normally when things aren't going well or when there's issues ongoing that maybe drives people more to be more attuned. And I think part of it is key is education and just understanding how the different levels of government work, how you can use your MP. And so that was one of my final messages to both classes. Don't be afraid to reach out. I'm looking here on the wall right across from me right now, and I still have all the letters that I got up about a year ago when the unmarked graves were found at some of the former residential school locations, and a number of the schools the students wrote personal letters, and I personally will write back. In fact, I enjoy writing back to students, just even though they're not voters yet. I'll write back to them, and it's a great way because it's just a great way to stay engaged and to give them some indication of what's going on. So look, reach out anytime is my message to all constituents. Don't make assumptions that I'm tracking every single issue, so I can't do my job or understand where the majority of constituents are on an issue unless I get that feedback. So I appreciate it, and I will always be, I try to get back to people as quickly as possible. So it doesn't matter if you're a student or an adult, feel free to reach out to my office at any time.
So it would be fair to say the kids are all right. Kids
are great. Yeah, the public school kids, even like if you want to talk about some of the challenges over the last couple of years, my observation, the mental health issue, which obviously transcends any level of government, is I think the public school kids are going to be all right. Those elementary level kids, I think they adjust pretty quick. But I still have huge concerns of the mental health impacts for our teenagers and the high school kids from talking to many of my friends that are high school teachers. So I think there's lots of work for all of us for the next few years at every level, and society and our communities in general, and just to take care of our own internal families too. Sometimes is make sure we're reaching out and staying in contact. As things all the time, we need to do that. But I think our teenage demographic over the last few years needs to get some special attention going forward.
Very, very true. I think that those of us in the rural community have maybe a bit of a leg up because we are community, and we do try to keep an eye out for our neighbors and do things that are helpful to each other and support each other. But that can't stop. It's got to continue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alex, let's shift things just a little bit. We were talking about legislation, but one of the big overarching announcements this spring, since we talked last, was the Liberal NDP agreement, which you described in one very succinct word: ridiculous.
Yeah, so I mean, that wasn't legislation. That's an agreement between the two political parties. Confidence and supply agreement, I think, is the proper terminology. But basically what it's done now is the NDP has agreed to support the Liberal minority government on any bill, any legislation that's a confidence vote or business supply, i.e. money. And so frankly, I don't understand why they did it. They had that agreement. They had that leverage anyway. So I actually think the NDP has given up a key tool. And again, I guess they're putting their trust that the government will honor sort of the priority issues that they want dealt with over the next couple of years. But again, when it comes to a question of trust in political parties, in particular the current one that we've had, I think, as we saw last summer, we just got to go back to last summer when all of us voted in the House of Commons. I think it was unanimous, with the exception of independent MP Derek Sloan that voted against it. We all voted that there shouldn't be an election called in the pandemic, unless the government falls through a confidence vote or something like that. And everybody voted for it, including the Prime Minister and the current government. And then as soon as the polls indicated last summer that they were leading in double digits and were heading towards majority territory, they called the election. And so I wouldn't put it past them to do something similar as soon as they get to that position. So again, I find it ridiculous. We have seen time allocation used a lot more often. We haven't seen them declare anything, as my prediction was, yet a confidence motion that isn't already a vote of confidence, i.e. the Budget Implementation Act or something like that. However, I wouldn't be shocked if there is. They did use it. That was pre-agreement with the Emergencies Act, as you know, where they had, they basically curtailed their own Liberal backbenchers from being able to vote for the revocation of the Emergencies Act because they made it a confidence vote. So we'll see how it goes forward. I don't even understand the political strategy from the NDP for deciding to go this route, but ultimately they've made those decisions, and now I think they struggle some days in the House with some of the discussions and debate because their hands are a little bit tied, whereas I think it would have been in their better interest to have that leverage still, but so be it. They decided to do it. It is legal, despite some concerns I hear from people. It is a legitimate agreement that they've done. I personally don't understand why they did it, and I know that's what Canadians didn't vote for. They didn't vote for a Liberal NDP coalition last fall. They did choose to vote for respective parties and elected individual MPs right across this country, and ultimately it wasn't a coalition that they were voting for. That wasn't on the ballot.
Yes, that's a very good point, Alex, because there have been times in both provincial and federal governments when these arrangements have been made, often in times of conflict. I know that during World War I, for example, there was a union government, and certainly there have been other arrangements here in Ontario over the years. But, they are legal, but as you say, what's the logic? So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and who knows? You just never know what is going to happen.
No, you don't, and I mean, nobody gets involved in politics if they want to be bored, right? So there's lots to keep us excited and lots of challenges. So that's one of the things I do enjoy about the job, is I'm not bored in the least.
I'll bet. And I guess when you left the military, you thought, well, what am I going to do? And you're in politics. Is it as exciting or just different from your former career in the military?
Oh, it's fundamentally different, and it's a different level of excitement. I don't hide, like, one of the factors that when I decided to leave was, even within the military, especially as you move up in the higher ranks, it becomes small p political, or a lot of the decisions at that level that you're working on does require, as it rightfully should, is our civilian government oversight and decisions. So you can't always get what you want when you're in uniform. And so what's the way to change it? Well, take your uniform off, get involved in federal politics. So it's a way to advocate and fight for certain issues. But when I signed up, I was an infantry officer. It's about going out and spending time out doing stuff with people and your soldiers and doing the operational stuff. And I mean, I was on operations and very busy, obviously, when I came out of Baghdad. But my point is, that isn't what I really loved about the military. It was being in command. And so the great thing about getting involved in politics, the pandemic's obviously thrown a bit of a wrench in it, is going out and talking to people, meeting with people. And of course, I need to use the technology, or was a lot over the last 2 years, a lot more on phone calls and Zoom or Skype. However, the great thing is just talking to people, meeting people. So look, there's been no real surprises. There's been lots of frustrations. There's way too much yapping and yipping going on unless not enough action in my viewpoint. But look, I believe in solving problems, not creating new ones. So I'm just going to keep doing what I can to best represent the constituents of Bruce-Grey-Owen Sound.
Well, that spoken like both a true politician and a true soldier. So thank you for that. Very briefly, just wanted to touch on a report that was released this week, where the government was brought to task for not doing enough to support veterans, seniors, and making it clear that there are services available. I thought it was a pretty good knuckle rap that the government was on the receiving end of this week.
Is that the Auditor General's report?
The Auditor General's report.
Yeah. So
yes.
look, David, you know more about it than me. I have been so busy the last couple of days. I have yet had the opportunity to review that complete report. I know some of our lead shadow ministers have been out on it, and been lots of discussions and media articles on it. But look, I'm not going to. I'll hold my comments back until I actually get a chance to read it, because I believe it's better to talk from a position of knowledge, not a position of ignorance.
Well, I did notice that the minister was rather defensive about the critique that the Auditor General gave to his department, particularly with respect to veterans and the wait times, including RCMP officers and civilian employees. So look forward to your comments, perhaps the next time we have a chance to talk. But let's talk about the summer. What are your plans for the summer? You obviously have work to do. There may be committee work, but you'll be back in the constituency, I take it, this summer?
Oh, absolutely. Back there all summer. It'll be like last summer. I wasn't in Ottawa at all from, I think, once I got back at the end of June actually I didn't really get back at all until post-election, right? So it was the end of September, early October before I even got back to Ottawa. So no plans to be in Ottawa at all this summer. I'm back in the riding all summer. I do have, I shouldn't say that, I do have a good ex-military friend of mine who's getting married, I think in end August or something. So I got one weekend. I'm going to try to make it to his wedding. But other than that, I'm looking forward to be back in the riding all summer. Looking forward to a lot of events. It's already started. Trying to manage the schedule on the weekends to make the trip back, to make it back to some events that have already kicked off, and that are going on in the communities. So looking forward to that even in the next few weeks. So obviously lots of community events to go ongoing. Haven't booked any sort of vacation or time off yet, although I think my time off is going to be building a new house. I'm committed to building a new house, but I've yet to get that all sort of finalized. And trying to find, due to the huge labor shortages that we have right across the region and the country, and it's impacting the construction trade just as much. So I actually spent part of my Saturday getting the forms done up for my footings for my foundation of my house. So I might just be building a house in any spare time I have this summer. But the key event that I do want to highlight, and it ties into something else that I put out and I'm sort of promoting, is the Platinum Jubilee for the Queen. I've minted 70 Platinum Jubilee coins to recognize 70 deserving constituents right across the riding. And so anybody can nominate them. They just got to provide the substantiation and through to my office. So that's on my website, alexruffmp.ca/Platinum Jubilee, all one word. And I put it on social media as well. But ideally, I'm going to be able to get back to the constituency barbecues that my predecessor, Larry Miller, used to hold in the Kilsyth area. I'm holding mine in the 24th of July down in Chesley at the Pavilion, and so that's open to everybody. Come get some hot dogs and hamburgers. We will have ideally some live music, but as well, I'd like to be able to recognize and present a number of those coins to those deserving recipients on the 24th of July. So my only plug there as well for the rest of the summer is to any organization or group or constituent that wants me to show up at maybe a key birthday celebration or something like that, or to talk to me or come out on a stakeholder event. Please, the sooner you get it on the calendar, the better chance I'll be able to make it there. And so please reach out to my office.
Well, just to go back to the coins, is that a military tradition or a military practice that you're using? Because I am familiar with some of those coins. In fact, I have one that was presented to me by the Military Family Resource Center for some work that I was doing back during the Afghanistan war. But is that the genesis of the idea?
It is, but again, it's been going on for years now, and MPs from different stripes have been utilizing it, this sort of thing. But I believe that the concept has come from the challenge coin idea that's within the Canadian Armed Forces or within militaries in general. And so I know there's a number of MPs in my caucus that have adopted this idea and are doing it as well. So yeah, that's exactly sort of where it is. It's got that nexus coming from that background, and it's a way to do it. And in light that the government decided not to issue platinum jubilee medal, and which personally I find disappointing, considering it's the Queen's platinum jubilee, 70 years already. Been the longest monarch in British, I think, in any history of any monarchy in the world for a number of years now, and I'm pretty confident saying, like, I don't know if we'll ever have a monarch anywhere else around the globe that will have spent as much time as Queen Elizabeth II has. So I think it's a great opportunity not only to pay tribute to the unbelievable leadership she's shown during her reign, but at the same time to really recognize, especially over the last couple of years, the incredible contribution so many Canadians and constituents have done. So I'm looking forward to reading through. I'm hoping, as I've said, I think on the local radio station, the challenge of having too many nominations, receiving too many of them into my office, where I'm actually having to, go through and making a tough decision on whittling the number down to the 70 deserving recipients. But I'm looking forward to reading those, and hopefully lots of people will reach out and get that in. The deadline's the 30th of June into my office, so we got a month left to get that stuff in.
Well, that's great to hear, Alex. That's really actually kind of exciting, because I think it engages people both in the Jubilee celebrations, but also in community recognition. Speaking of which, when you mentioned that this is the Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne, there is, I would say, the overwhelming majority of Canadians have never known any other monarch other than Elizabeth II. And I know that's true for me. It's true for you. And that's a pretty remarkable span of reign for any monarch, but especially in this country.
No, absolutely. As I said, I don't think we'll ever see a monarch in the same position ever again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Now, I also wanted to touch on something that I'm sure was quite sensitive for you, because you're a graduate of RMC, I believe, and that is the death of the 4 students in the graduating class this year at RMC. A tremendous tragedy, not just for the graduating class, but also for the leadership of the Canadian Forces and also for this country.
Yeah, absolutely tragic. 4 officer cadets killed in a vehicle accident right there at the college, and what really hit home, I mean, obviously the impact it's going to have on all the families and, the class and the military community and the college. But my own personal connection, not to any of the cadets that I know personally, but the parents of Broden Murphy, the one cadet that was killed, is Major Dave Murphy, that's still serving out in the West Coast. His wife, Stephanie, and him. But Dave is a classmate of mine. We graduated the Royal Military College in 1997 together. So I was fortunate, on this tragic occasion to at least be able to recognize and pay tribute to those cadets and their families in the House of Commons during a statement that I was able to deliver after the event occurred. So look, just tragic. I know a bit of a plug to my own graduating class. We did a quick fundraiser on it, and I believe We got over $3,000 in donations very, very quickly, and we ensured that there was flowers sent in recognition to all 4 cadets' families during their respective ceremonies and funerals. But we're actually looking to take the bulk of that funds and maybe donate, because it's our 25th graduation reunion this fall in September, mid-September. In fact, I think it's the weekend before I go back to the house. So don't book me for anything. I think the weekend of 16th to the 18th of September, because I will be in Kingston at that reunion. And but I think we're going to try to come up with an idea to present a memorial or something at the college to commemorate those 4 cadets that were killed. And just one of those things where we can all just hope and pray nobody ever has to go through again. But those tragic accidents do occur, but it's just one of those things. Yeah, it hit home even more when it's somebody that you know personally.
Exactly. It's one thing to grieve the loss of the potential, because after all, 4 young people who are potential leaders in Canadian Forces, but also potentially in this country, are gone, and there's a hole in that graduating class. And I'm sure that those who graduated must also be struggling tremendously.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. It's certainly this country grieves with you and with all those the families and all those who are grieving the loss of their these officer cadets, to be sure. Well, Alex, it's going to be an interesting summer, no matter which way it is, because we've got a provincial election here in Ontario. We've got and so you'll have a new colleague, no matter which party is victorious in this riding. You'll have a new colleague, and then who knows what the summer will bring. But I'm quite sure that we shall be talking again at some point about what's happening in the House. And again, people, if they want to reach out to you, that your constituency office in Owen Sound is open for business, and people can reach out in many different ways to you.
Yeah, absolutely, David. The office is always open Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. Send me an email at alex.ruff@parle.gc.ca. Give the office a call at 519-371-1059, or check out my website, alexruffmp.ca. All our contact information's on there, and you can send requests in. You can do different things and sign up for my monthly newsletter. It's an e-newsletter that goes out, but for those that don't have email, you can always just call the office, ask, and I will mail you a hard copy of it as well. And so, we'll still try to get out every month or two, I try to get out something in the mail too for all constituents on either important legislation or a certain issue, surveys, to provide that feedback and remind people, reach out. Again, I appreciate the feedback all the time, and I just want to wish everybody a great summer, and you too, David, and the team at Politically Speaking, but at the same time, just all the best, and I'm looking forward to a relatively normal summer.
And with that, Alex, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk, and thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.